Can we have everyone just stand up for a second? Just stand up. Everyone get up. Stand up. Give it a stretch. Just way up high. Saturday morning. Give it a stretch. Does everyone in the room know each other? Do you guys take classes with each other? Do you not know each other?
Some people.
Some people, sometimes? Okay. We're going to introduce ourselves, but can we just go quickly around the room and just give our names and maybe what year we are here? Do we have all undergraduate? Is there any graduate students here? All undergraduate? Okay, so maybe your year, your name, your year, and quickly what interests you have. And then once you give us that, sit back down. Is that cool? All right, so we'll start kind of over here. Go ahead.
Hey, my name's Ziad. I'm a junior.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And now you get to sit. And it's Ziad? Okay, welcome Ziad.
I'm Gustavo. I'm a freshman, and I'm an economics major.
Gustavo, welcome.
Tommy, I'm a freshman, entrepreneurship major.
Welcome, Tommy. We'll start on this side.
I'm Nate, junior, and entrepreneurship major.
Okay, all right. Thanks,
I'm
Nate.
DJ. I'm a senior, finance major.
I'm Matt. I'm also a senior. I'm a business management major.
I'm Shamar. I'm a senior. I'm a computer major.
Welcome.
I'm Mike. I'm a sophomore, and I'm a marketing.
Welcome, Mike.
My name is Dara, senior, MIS major.
It's Ditto?
MIS major.
Okay, welcome.
My name is Isabel. I'm a freshman, and I'm a criminology major.
Cool, welcome. We'll start back
yeah,
here.
there's no
Oh, we
guy.
have back here? Are you, you're hiding, okay. Oh, you took a seat too. Yeah.
Hey, but you stick to me. I'm Solomon. I'm a business management major. I'm a senior.
Okay, welcome.
I thought you were one of our evaluators back there.
I know, you're just sneaking.
I'm Thomas. I'm a senior.
Right.
International business and finance major.
Cool, welcome, Thomas.
I'm Katie. I'm a senior, and I'm a marketing major.
Welcome, Katie.
David. I'm a senior. I'm a management major.
Welcome, Devin.
I'm Ryan. I'm a freshman, marketing major.
I'm Michaela, I'm a junior, I'm a business management major.
Welcome.
I'm Shannon, I'm a senior marketing major.
Welcome.
I'm Kyle. I'm a senior and business management major.
I'm Christina, I'm a freshman, I'm international business and finance.
Cool, welcome.
I'm Chris. I'm a freshman and I'm a finance major.
Welcome.
I'm also Chris, junior, finance major.
Welcome. We'll introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Bob Wagner. I'm a assistant professor at Western University, got my ears. And basically, I'm relatively new to teaching. I had 35 years in business. I was a management consultant at a large strategy firm for 20 years, and then I was an entrepreneur for the last 14. Luckily, my company got sold in a way favorable to me, and so now I'm doing what I always wanted to do, which is teach. So happy to be here. Happy to sort of talk to you all about entrepreneurship because it's the lifeblood of America, in my belief. So
I'm Lisa Cooley. I teach marketing at Delta State University in Cleveland, Mississippi. So while I'm not from South Africa, I still talk funny. So I know everybody's like, where are you from? But prior to teaching at Delta State, I worked in community development at Chambers of Commerce and for mayor's offices in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. So I've got a lot of experience working with small business owners.
And I'm Jess Thurkelson, which is a mouthful. It's over there. When I was sitting in your shoes, I majored in geology. I worked as a geologist for a few years and then switched careers and became a documentary filmmaker. I'm a documentary filmmaker now and photographer, but I also owned and directed a production company in DC for a number of years before kind of switching gears and getting into academia. Really enjoy teaching. All different kinds of classes, and entrepreneurship is something that I've been passionate about for a number of years. So happy to be with you today. I teach at California State University, Fresno, but originally from the East Coast, and it's my first time in Tampa. Thanks. It's a cool town. It's a cool town. So let's jump in. Yeah. Okay. Mark Juarez, right? The Mark Juarez case. That is where we are, right? Everyone's on track with this. Mark Juarez. Okay, so we're kind of traveling back in time. Let's throw everything that we know about what we know about this, okay? Let's throw everything that we know on this board and just kind of get a bird's eye view. So give me what you synthesized that you think is important that we need to write down. Go. Anything. Yes?
He invented the new massage device.
He has this kind of funky thing going on, right? It is a massage device. Has anyone used anything like this before? Have seen it before? You have seen it? Anyone else seen it before? I think you could, can you still buy this? Has anyone like looked online?
I've seen like ones on eBay, right?
They kind
They
of.
have like the 4 balls too, but they're not.
Does anyone know what this is called? Do I call it massage balls? Is that weird? Should I call it massage balls?
A little creepy, but no.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Like what? Massage tool, massage device.
Still creepy.
Maybe we should. I know. We need to have some sort of name for this. Massage device. All right. So I don't know if it's actually on the market yet, but okay. So he has a device. What else do we know about this that's important to where we are and what we need to do? What else?
It's meant for massage therapists.
Okay. So why is it meant for massage therapists?
Research hands-on therapists have developed protocols.
Okay, so the therapists, sometimes they get hand cramps, right? Which is very painful because they're always using their hands all the time. What else? What else do we know? This is all we got right now. We got 2 things. We got a device and we got, okay, what else?
His biggest dilemma is he has like limited resources and it's gonna be expensive and time consuming.
Okay, so I'm gonna put Mark over here. He's very happy. He has limited resources. What are those limited resources?
Well, he's like living abroad and doesn't have much money, and they said that the patent attorney is gonna need $4,000 and it's gonna take like up to 2 years, and he really doesn't have a lot of disposable income.
What has Mark been doing all these years?
Traveling, doing odd jobs.
Mark's got a pretty cool life, right? He's traveled the last 10 years out of 15. He's lived in Europe. Has anyone ever been to Europe before? Has anyone traveled to Europe before? Does anyone want to travel to Europe? Is it easy? Why not?
Expensive.
It's expensive. Okay. So he's been able to find a way to do it, right? He's been able to find a way of doing it, but he doesn't have a lot of money in the bank. Okay. All right, so these are all really good things. What else? What else do we know that we need to consider? Yes, sir.
He spent $4,000 to get research done on the patent.
Okay, good. I forgot to write that down. Yes. Okay, so a patent for this. Does the patent itself cost $4,000? What?
Just to research to see if there's already a patent for something like that.
$4,000 only to research if the massage device is patented, right? Okay. And who did he contact? Who did he contact to do this?
Patent attorney.
A patent attorney where?
Berlin.
In Berlin. Okay. To research to research the patent. All right. What else do we know? This thing was only a page and a half, right? But yet there was some information in here. There's some information here that's kind of pertinent. What else do we know? You guys are investigative reporters right now.
Some people really like this device.
That what?
Everyone that he showed this device to
Ah.
used it, they really liked it.
Okay, so good. Who were those people? Everybody. Who was everybody?
The customers and the other massage therapists that he worked with.
Okay, so there was some. So the other customers, but were basically, who were they? They were his students, right? They liked the product. So he was getting some positive feedback on that, right? He got some positive feedback. Okay, what else? Is there anything else that's important to this that we need to know? What are we doing right now? What are we doing right now? What am I asking you for? Just background information, right? Just asking you for background information. Let's say Mark is a good friend of yours, and he gives you a call. By the way, this is 1991, so he's giving you a call very expensively across the Atlantic because there's no cell phones. Actually, was there cell phones in 1991?
There were. Yeah, I'm old enough. They were. Yeah, they
How
were
big-
really
how
expensive.
big were those cell phones?
It was about the size of a brick, right?
Okay, yeah. Do you guys see that trash can back there? It's about the size of a cell phone. That was in 1991. Okay.
Anywhere like 300 bucks a
um,
month.
So he gives you a call on his huge cell phone or some other thing, and he said, hey, I know that you're studying business. I know that you're studying finance. I know you're studying marketing. I know that you have taken a few of these classes, and I just want to run this idea by you to see what you think, right? Because what do we need to do here? Basically, the question is, what's my next steps, right? Okay, so here's my question to you. He gives you a call. What do? You're all business students. You have more background business knowledge than the average person already with just the classes you've taken. So what do? Say that again? How do you research it? Nate, you're on the right track. We're doing it right now, aren't we? How are we doing it? We're studying it, we're talking about it. What am I asking you right now? Questions. Lots of questions. Your first step when you are consulting with someone is what? To ask questions, right? Okay, so I'm asking you all of these questions that you need to be asking of this case, right? And you need to be finding those answers. So you're really digging down deep in here. You really need to kind of dig in deep. You all need to put on your investigative reporter hats, and you need to be thinking about, okay, well, how am I going to ask the right questions? As a consultant, as someone who goes into business, you might be seen as the one that needs to be giving answers, right? You're like, oh, well, you have all of those answers because you took those classes, you have the degree. Do you have the answers? Maybe, but not all the time. What should you have? Say it again. Questions. Okay, so let's start with questions. I was starting the questions with you, and we were putting these things up here, right? All right, your turn. What are the questions? What are the questions that we need to ask Mark? He doesn't have much time to talk. He's talking on a cell phone the size of that trash can. It's costing him a fortune. So he calls you up and he says, okay, what's my next steps? You start asking questions. What are those questions that you ask? Yes, sir.
How much did the $1 charge to make like each one?
It's a good start, right? Okay, so what was that question?
Like how much would it cost to make each one?
How much money did it cost? What did it call? Was it a wooden dollar?
He went to a wood dollar, which is a person who carves wood, and he had him like make the prototype basically.
All right. How much did it cost you? Good question. Another question, Nate.
Question like the marginal benefit.
Tell me what marginal benefit is. Because, you've taken the classes, I haven't. Tell me what that means.
I mean, so like if it's gonna benefit you, rather.
No,
It's
it's self-explanatory. Marginal benefit. You're on the right track. You're totally on the right track. Give me like in layman's terms what that means.
Like the reward's gonna be better than like what you're getting gonna be better than what you're giving up.
Am I making more money than I'm spending? Good. Okay. I'm going to write that.
It's too early to think.
What's that?
It's too early to think. Like
Too early to think. I know. All right, I'm going to write up marginal benefits, but we kind of understand what that means. Yes?
Who's the target market?
What does that mean?
Who's going to be buying this?
Who's going to be buying this? What's another name for that? Give me layman's terms for that.
Customers?
Customers. Good. Other questions? What other questions do we have? Yes.
Retail price.
How much are you going to sell it for? So, how is this, how much are you going to sell it for related to this? How much does it cost to make?
Profit margin.
Ah, good. We have some terms that are being thrown around. So, understanding the underlying terms and concepts of what this is really important, but when you have a friend like Mark that calls you up who doesn't have the kind of business background that you guys do, you do need to be able to explain these things kind of in normal terms, right? What else? Other questions? I know questions at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. These are good. We're on the right track. Yes?
Do you have any investors?
Aha. You have investors. We can walk down that road a little bit more too. Yes?
What's the problem that it solves?
Ah, good. What's the problem that it solves? Michaela, why do you ask that question?
Because you need to make sure that it's a viable opportunity.
That it's a viable opportunity. We were just talking about opportunities. What would make it a viable opportunity, you think, in your opinion?
Just making sure that there's a demand for the product.
Is there sufficient demand? Good. Question mark. What else? All right, so you guys have started to throw out some of these questions, which is really good. This is where you begin. Where do you think, are there any other questions that we haven't asked?
Have they been made yet? Online person?
Is there competition? Can someone buy this somewhere else? Good. What else? There's a lot of questions that we need to be asking. You guys are kind of hitting a lot of them all around. I'm going to leave. Let's leave this up, and I think if we need to go back to questions, we'll go back to questions. Okay? But we kind of, at this point, we are throwing things up. We're throwing what we know. In the middle of the board here is what we know, right? What's this over here? What we want to know. Okay? So we got these two things. We got point A and point B. What do we do? Haha. How do we do it? You're right. Right? Anytime there's something that you know and there's something that you don't know, there's a knowledge gap, right? There's a gap. So how do you do it? You have to link them between what you know and what you don't know. But then what are some of the ways that we do that?
Read a book.
You read a book. Good. Okay. So all right. So basically what we're doing here is you're saying, okay, well, what are our next steps? We've thrown everything that we know. We have the things that we want to know, and now our next steps. Nate said read a book, also known as research. Yeah, right? Okay. What are our sources of research? We have books. Ah. Poor saps living back in 1991. Poor saps living back in 1991. What's happening? There is no Google. Holy crap, there's no Google. I know, right? It's a different, cruel, cruel world. So what do we do? There's a library, there's books. I'm going to write research here. So when you go to a book, when you go to the library, when you read articles, what kind of research is that called?
Secondary.
Good. What makes it secondary?
You're not the one collecting it.
Ah.
Somebody's been collecting for you.
Okay. secondary basically assumes that there's something before that or primary, right? Okay, what's primary research?
Research that you got on your own.
How do you do that?
For example, if you want to be the one who goes and talks to Mark about his product, that'll be you getting your own research.
Right? Good. Okay. I wrote secondary first, strangely enough, but oftentimes in our heads, that's what we think about. We think, well, let's go onto the internet, let's go to the library, let's read an article, let's see what has been done before. Oftentimes we think about doing secondary research first. Is that kind of the way that you do things when you have a paper or something like that? Why?
Because if you don't go to secondary first, then you can end up like doing things redundantly. So like, they collect the primary research on stuff that's already been done before, then you're just wasting your own time.
Yeah. Also,
Cheaper.
it's cheaper. Also, it's easier, right? Primary research is a little bit harder, isn't it? Do you guys like just kind of cold calling someone and being like, hey, thought I'd ask you a few questions, is that cool? Or just kind of knocking on their door, hey, thought I'd ask a few questions, you don't mind, do you? A little tricky. We have what we know. We have what we want to know. And we have ways of linking those two, right? Okay. Business consulting, solving problems, critically thinking, that is basically what you will be looked at once you have your business degree and you move on. And people look to you for answers. Oftentimes, you don't need to have those answers. You need to know what you know and what you don't know, more than anything else. Does that make sense? And that's kind of what these cases. Every time that you read a case, anytime that you have any kind of problem that you need to solve, those are the basic steps that you do to kind of move forward, right? So I think we are going to dig a little bit deeper. I think if we could pick one of these things, why don't we start? What do you think is one of the most important things that you might want to look at first? Competition. What else? Good. Let's kind of like prioritize these. Why is competition important?
Because if there's already another business doing the same thing, what's the point of creating?
Hey, if there's already someone that's making this, do I have a chance? What else? Demand.
So
You're gonna say? What drives demand? A need from the customer. I would make the argument that we need to know our customer more than anything else, right? So Kayla, you were the one that said, let's see, what's the problem that it solves? Who is it solving it for? Because you need to know your customer more than anything else, right? Do you agree? Okay. Let's kind of dive deeper into who our customer is and what we need to know about them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I agree that you need to know the customer. That's one of the most important things because that's going to help drive your decisions with the product. So you may want to pivot and modify your product based on what you find out from your customers. So really quick, let's just identify some of the different segments that could be possible for this product. So who are the different segments that might be interested in purchasing the massage device? Okay, so massage therapist. Anybody else? Would anybody else want to buy this?
Just people with back pain.
Okay, anybody else? Physical therapist, okay. Anybody else? Occupational therapist. Okay, so we'll just do therapist, OT, PT, all the different therapists. And so what's different about this segment than this segment so far?
They use it satisfying.
Okay, so this is going to be for personal use, which would be what? Who's buying that?
Normal people.
A consumer. So it's consumer to or business to consumer. And then this is to what? Business to business. Okay. So people with pain, any kind of customer could really buy this, right? Are there other groups of individuals that may buy one of these? Does anybody's parent have one of those? Like a little back massage thing? Okay, do they have back pain, or they just buy it just for a massage, right? So pretty much anyone could be in this segment. So what you have to decide, or what Mark has to decide, is which segment's the most attractive. So how do you determine which segment's the most attractive?
Where there's more people, more opportunity.
More opportunity? Okay. So what do you think? So what kind of opportunity could exist in these? What about segment size?
B2C is like anyone could get it. It's like a big market, anyone could get it. But for the therapists, they're only limited, like they're limited features.
Okay. So size is a positive here, and then here size would probably be a negative because there are not as many therapists, right? There are not as many massage therapists that are available. Also, how many of you have had a massage? From a personal masseuse. Okay, did they pull out a little wooden thing? No. How would you feel if a masseuse pulled out a little wooden thing and rubbed you with that? Like, their hands are their instruments. So maybe, his business model for the massage therapist being the customer isn't the best customer because at the end, the customer of that massage therapist may not like that. So you have to think about things like that, size and the growth of the segment. So you have a much larger potential market when you look at consumers than you do with businesses. Then you also have to look at the segment structural attractiveness. So how easy would it be for competitors to enter the market? So is it easy for a competitor to enter this market? Yeah, I mean, there's a patent, but I would say it's relatively easy to produce some kind of a similar product. And then objectives and resources. So does he have the skills and resources to go after either one of these segments?
No.
What do you know about Mark?
He doesn't have any money.
He doesn't have any money. What else?
He spent $4,000 on research.
He spent $4,000 on research. Yeah,
He didn't spend it yet.
No, you didn't.
He was quoted $4,000.
he was quoted $4,000. What about Mark's personality?
He doesn't really stick with one thing too long.
He's flaky. He's flaky. So does he really have the resources to put out a product that's going to go out to thousands or millions of consumers? And how would he reach those consumers? So if you have a market, like if we decided based on, that the market's larger, with the business to consumer market, how do you decide who to target within that? Because he's not going to be able to reach everybody. So would he just go specifically with a region? Would he use a geographic segmentation method? There are a lot of things that he has to think through, before he determines what the best method of, picking a target market. So we've identified segments. Based on these segments, he's got to pick, one or two, just a few segment markets that he's actually going to go after. And then once he determines the segments or the target market that he's going to go after, then he's got to make a lot of other decisions about pricing and things like that. Because he may be able to charge more if he sells less of the product. So if he's selling it just to massage therapists, he's going to have to charge a higher price because he's selling fewer of them. But if he's selling his product to millions of potential consumers, then he would probably charge a lower price for that because he's going to deal with a lot larger of a number of products. So do you want to kind of come up and
Thanks. All right, so let's assume that Mark's picked a couple segments and he's done the research, or you all have done the research, you've determined there's enough critical mass there to move forward, okay? So then the question would be, he might say, well, okay, what do I got to do to make this a business, right? What do I got to do to make this a business? First question that, and the way I always look at this is, anybody here ever seen a 2x2 before? Anybody ever want to go into consulting? If you want to go to consulting, 2x2s are your best friend. Basically, it's a way to show things on 2 dimensions. So with entrepreneurship, I always look at what's the attractiveness of the market, right? From low to high. We'll just put attractiveness. And then what's the probability of success from low to high, right? So as you look at these things, what quadrant do you want to live in? Top right. That's, you can always, if you do these, always make sure the top right's the place to be, because that's where everybody wants to go, right? So the first thing we actually did was we were looking at attractiveness, right? Is this bigger than a bread box? Is it something that really I would be interested in doing? What we need to talk about now is the probability of success. What are the things that are going to determine whether or not I, Mark, can actually get that, right? The market's there, we've determined. How am I going to make sure that I can actually do that? So one of the things that we talked about was pricing, right? So have you all here done break-even analysis before? Break-even analysis is basically kind of at what price do I break even? There's a lot of variables in that, and so on and so forth. So if we look at pricing, what's going to be the key thing that determines if he sets a low price to drive a lot of volume, or he sets a higher price and he's satisfied with less volume? What are some of the things we care about? What's one of the most important things when it comes to determining the price of a product? Target market, how much they'll pay, right? What's the other side of that? Yeah.
Customer satisfaction.
Customer satisfaction, yeah.
Cost of manufacturing.
Cost of manufacturing too, right? So if I've got, you know, a guy with a lathe in his garage, right, making these, I don't have any scale, right? I don't have anything, so I'm probably going to have more expensive things. So one of the things he hasn't talked about yet is how am I going to produce these things? So if he decides I'm going to price them at 20 bucks a pop and I can sell 200,000 units, one of the things is going to be how can I actually produce this? How can I manufacture it, right? So what are his options for manufacturing? We know one of them, right? Because he's done it. Find a guy with $1, or what do they call it? A wood dollar, right? I guess it's kind of like a lathe, but yeah, a wood dollar. So that's probably kind of cottage industry-ish, right? So what are some of his other options?
Big factory.
Yeah, factory, right? Or, I mean, this is 1991. He still could have maybe offshored it, right? He could have gone to China or something, and you know. So today, what do people do? Excuse me. Today, if you have a product idea, how do you go about manufacturing it? I mean, everybody here watch Shark Tank, right? And people say, I got this product idea, and they always ask them, how's it get manufactured? What's often the answer? I have a manufacturer in China, right? I mean, it's relatively easy today to actually find, you know, you send a prototype and they can make them and so on and so forth. So that's one of the major questions he has to answer is, how am I going to manufacture this thing? And because that's going to help determine what the price is. If he can find a way to make it relatively inexpensively, or let's say it's, you know, he can get some scale, then he can start talking about that. So what about the next big question that's in there too, which is that he really needs to answer before he moves too far? We've talked about the $4,000. That's for what?
Research patent.
Right, for researching the patent. And why is a patent so important on something like this?
Needs to know if anyone else has come up with it.
Right. Or if not, let's say that he does the 4,000 and the lawyer says we're clean, right? There's nobody else that's done it. Then what's his next risk?
Spending the money to actually get it done.
Right. And if he doesn't, let's say he says, you know what? Let's just roll and do it. Then what happens? Yeah. Yeah. Somebody he like makes a lot of money, and it's like then somebody who's got more resources comes in and basically steals all his market share, right? So sort of protection, particularly if you have a proprietary product, legal protection is really key. What's kind of screwed up about how he's doing this now, the whole patent thing, if you look at it?
It's in Berlin.
Yeah, he's doing it in Berlin. You think that gets back to what his geographic target market and stuff is too. If it were me, I would probably say the US is probably a bigger market, right, depending on where I want to go. Wouldn't I probably want to maybe do the legal work over there, right? So you need to align all the things that happen as part of that process. All right, what's one of the next big thing he needs to worry about? So see, we found a way to manufacture it. We're going to sell to consumers. We got the legal protection. We're comfortable with that. What's the next big thing we got to worry about? Yeah.
How does he actually get the capital to be able to follow through on these steps?
Okay, that's a good thing. Save that because we're going to put that a couple steps down, because what we're kind of doing here is sort of building the business plan, right? And often, once the plan's built, that's when you go ask for capital. But that's a great question. Let's table that. What about the next thing? And this is I'll give you a hint. This is the thing where 1991 removes a major option for you versus today. Think about that. What's the next big thing he's got to worry about?
Knowing what the product is.
Pardon?
Actually knowing.
Knowing it, which means advertising it and/or selling it, right? Kind of what's the sales channel going to be, right? So this would have been an easy case today. I would just say the sales channel is probably like, you know, slap it on the internet, right? I mean, you basically could, this would be the kind of thing that you could probably pretty easily find a market for. In 1991, that's not as much an option. What were some of the distribution channels in 1991? Radio, TV, direct sales forces, right? Maybe selling it through retail channels, like going to, I actually think I've seen these in like Sharper Image, some of those kind of funky, where you buy funky stuff, drones and things kind of places, right? So he's got to decide what his strategy is going to be to sell this thing, right? And so what kind of things do you need to understand to do that? If you're going to pick a sort of a distribution sales strategy, what are the kind of things you need to understand to be able to do that?
Which ones use the most?
Which ones use the most? So there's sort of a success criteria, right? Which one's going to give me the best probability of success? What's the other thing you got to worry about? The cost, right? So if you go if you go through a retailer, guess what? Retailers are going to screw down your price, right? Because they want to sell it, and or if people are going to charge you commissions or whatever, right? So you have to look at the effectiveness of each channel and the cost of each channel, right? So let's assume we work through that. Then we have to worry. Now let's say we got our plan together. Now your point. What do we got to worry about?
The capital.
The capital, right? How we going to fund this thing, right? So what are some of his options in terms of how we can go about this? What's the one we always think about with an entrepreneur? I call it the big bang approach.
Get an investor to come on with it.
Right, and actually starting your own company, right? Sort of like it's Mark Suarez Inc., right? And he's got investors and he's got this and that. Is that the only option that he has? So what's on the other end of the spectrum? If you have a really good idea, but you don't really want to, what? Sell what? Your idea. That's excellent. So what are the couple of the options? You can just flat out sell it, right? What's another way to do it? Anybody here watch Shark Tank? There's one guy on there who always wants to do what? Commission or royalties, right? So basically you could license it too, and you could say to somebody, you make it, you sell it, you just send me a check for every unit you sell for 5 or 10%, right? So, yeah.
But wouldn't he need the patent first?
Well, you would. We'll assume he's patented it, right? So we're kind of working through that. But yeah, you're right. That's the first thing a licensing person would want to know, right? Or what they would say, sure, we'll do it, and then they would make it themselves, right? And keep all the money, right, off their own. Yeah, that's a great point. You have to protect it to do that. So are there other options? Sort of have the big bang, the company, the whole company. Then you got, okay, I'm going to sell the idea or I'm going to license it. Anything in between? Yeah.
Get bank loan.
Get bank loans? What's the difference between a bank loan and an equity investor?
Interest rate.
Interest rate? What else? If you wanted to keep a pretty tight control on your company, which one would you pick?
Bank loan.
Bank loan, right? Because the bank just wants their interest in their back, right? Why do people not go to banks all the time then and have to go to private equity people? Liability. Or the bank's not into like giving them a bunch of money. Because banks don't really care about risk, right? Because their return is limited by the amount of interest they can charge you, which is usually pretty small, right? A private equity investor, hey, he can get 100, 200% return, right? So they're more willing to take risk, right? So these are all the things you can advise him on kind of how to move forward these are all the things we need to worry about. We got to figure out how we're going to price it. We got to figure out how we're going to make it. We got to figure out how we're going to sell it and distribute it. We got to figure out, how we're going to fund it and so on and so forth. So these are just the kind of questions that we need to ask. So questions? Before I bring the team back out and Jess to sort of wrap things up. Questions about building the plan. Anybody here ever built a business plan? They're actually fun. I mean, this stuff's really kind of fun because you're really creating something. You're like I said, you're kind of working through it. It's like creating a full business, and you have a lot of options, right? You like, hey, let's license it, let's do this, let's do this. I think everybody often goes into stuff with, and when I first read this case, I kind of was like you. It's like, you know what? He's a little bit of a flake. Maybe he's not the person to start his own business. That doesn't mean it's not a good idea, right? That doesn't mean there aren't other avenues to take to drive through this. So.
Okay. On the back of your sheet, on the back of your case study, I want you to jot down recommendations You've had this conversation with Mark. He said, you know, I've run out of money on my calling card. And you take a week to think about this. You've done your primary and secondary research. And it's recommendation time. What do you tell him? Quickly write down what you think, taking in mind what we talked about today, some of the things that we went over. Just take a minute to kind of jot down your ideas. All right, I still see some pens moving, but the majority are down. So, who wants to share? Anyone have any ideas that they would like to share? Yes, sir?
I'd probably tell them to talk slower than a first-year business student. So,
Okay.
I like the self-awareness there. That's good.
So you would say, so he's how okay, so you'd say that
I would talk to, like, maybe, I don't know, like a patent lawyer, I guess I would invest in him, maybe not one from Berlin.
Okay.
To kind of assess the marketplace and
So
see
you-
how successful you think the product could be.
So you think that he should pursue the intellectual property and to see if it could be patented, or if it had been patented already?
Do the research on it, I guess.
Okay. All right. And to speak to more professionals who might have more knowledge of it. Yes, sir.
Like, is wood the best material to use for the product, or is there other better, cheaper solutions? Like, making balls out of wood is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta actually carve it into a ball.
Okay.
That's a
So
great
maybe
point.
Like rubber or
Yeah.
plastic or something might be better.
Okay.
That's a great point.
Okay. What other recommendations, suggestions do you guys have? Yeah.
Kind of like he was discussing, it might be a good idea just to sell the company with one.
Okay. In terms of selling the idea, licensing, how would you?
After it was patented, like just to sell the product.
Okay. So you're kind of on the same page over here, Thomas. We maybe pursue the intellectual property, see what the patent looks like, and then possibly licensing that out. Good. What's the time frame of that? How long will that take? At least a year, yeah. Maybe even 2, probably more than that. I think patents can sometimes take 2 or more. Other thoughts? Other recommendations?
Does anybody think that there's really a need for the product? Like, has he really established that there's a need? You don't think he has? And why not?
Because for the buyer to consumer thing, like, I have no desire to buy that. I'd see, it's one of those things you'd see at the checkout counter, and it's like.
So how could he research that? Like, he can't go to the library and find out that kind of information. So how would he research what the needs are? Who would he talk to?
You have to talk to the consumers.
He would have to get out and talk to the consumers. And that's one of the most important things that you can do in entrepreneurship is get out and talk to people, because before he spends a lot of money and wastes a lot of money on getting a patent and going through all these different processes, what if nobody even wants his product? So you really need to talk to people.
Other thoughts?
We got a minute left. We're going to bleed it to the end.
Right.
Not that we don't appreciate you coming out, but
There's a lot of considerations here at this, isn't there? Anytime that you have, so I think, you know, at the heart of this is that we have a pretty interesting idea. There's an interest, there's a product, right? What needs to be done is that he needs to really kind of think about one kind of concept he has. What's the business concept? How is he has this product, how are you going to target his customers? What's that unique proposition that he actually has? Does he have any competitive advantage? All of those things are really going to inform what decisions he has to make in order to kind of move forward, right? Because he has an interesting idea. And I think that's where you really need to kind of drive home and ask those questions. Yeah, one last question.
I think that the point was really emphasized that like it was better for the masseuse. Actually, you gotta think like the person that's getting the massage is the customer, they're the ones that are paying. So also you're not getting the massage yourself, so you're selling it to like a couple to give each other massages. So if the customer or whoever's getting the massage doesn't like the way that feels, it might be better for the masseuse, but they're the ones paying
Right.
for the massage.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
And I think
They're
that's
the
where they
receiving
ended
end.
up going with the product, is that these kind of products you can buy, like consumers can buy them, but you don't necessarily see them in a massage, like at a massage therapist's place, because, yeah. So, but
Okay,
yeah,
you're
you're
done.
right.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.